Hello, it's Kim Krause-Schwam, and we're going to be doing one of my favorite things to do, which are copy critiques. And in particular, we're going to be looking at some no-holds-barred copy critiques for more powerful leads. And this is going to be based on some real-life leads that my past copywriting mentees wrote and that I had a chance to critique in one of our group calls. So no tissues are required because it's not your copy. Not that you should be crying anyway, because it's always a great opportunity to get a critique. But keep in mind, my copy critiques are based on my past few decades of experience. I've worked with some of the smartest people in direct response, and no one is ever 100% about what will work. Hence, we learn and apply the best, most effective copywriting principles, which is why you're here, and then we test. So let's get started. So just a quick review, more pointers on copy critiques. If you ever get the chance to have someone more experienced than you critique your copy, you should absolutely do it. Just be sure to submit the cleanest, most perfect copy possible. No typos, no missing words, no obvious language mistakes. You want the copywriter to be able to focus on your copy and not get distracted by your careless errors. Do not get defensive or feel compelled to explain why you did something. Keep your mind open and shut up and listen. You just might learn something. Don't take copy feedback personally. As my friend and top A-list copywriter Carleen Anglais-Cole says on the cover of one of her books, your copy sucks, but you don't. All right, let's look at the first lead. This is for a promo that's about an investment opportunity using property-backed loans. It's written for the UK market. So let's start by looking at the headline and deck copy and reading from there. Now disciplined savers can beat the system and finally make their money work for them without taking crazy risk. Thanks to a guaranteed return investment that pays 650 times more than a cash ISA, these are all British terms, I suppose, while also giving you bank-grade security on your hard-earned savings. This exclusive, quote, can't lose opportunity is only available to 2 lucky investors a month. As you'll see in just a moment, this is as easy as £16,250 you'll ever earn in just 12 months. So first off, I'm just going to give a few quick things that come to mind about the headlines. I'm not doing a full-blown headline critique here, but I think make their money work for them. Maybe say finally make their money work harder for them, right? Because that's why they would take a risk. They're probably having their money work, but they could get it work harder, is implying that benefit. And I think that we've got a strong speed of result. I would lose the quotes around can't lose. And also there should probably be a hyphen in there. But when you put quotes around something, unless it's like a nickname or an actual quote, like it makes it sound like you're saying so-called solution in quotes, or that it isn't really a can't lose opportunity, right? It kind of takes away what you're trying to do there. So I would remove the quotes. Okay, we could probably do some more, but let's just get into the lead. All right, so let's read that opening sentence. Dear friend, you are about to discover a zero-time investment opportunity that gives you a guaranteed return and bank-grade security on your hard-earned savings. So I got just a tiny bit exhausted reading that. It's kind of long. You always want your opening sentence to be shorter and to the point, okay? And there's just too many different ideas that's trying to be accomplished here. You're about to discover is one idea. A zero-time investment opportunity, that's the second idea. And honestly, it's actually a third idea because zero time is its own idea. I'm not really even sure what that means. I think it's meaning that it doesn't take any of your time, but will someone reading that instantly grasp what zero time means, right? And then investment opportunity is a third idea. That gives you a guaranteed return, that's a fourth idea. And bank grade security, that's a fifth idea on your hard-earned savings. So, you don't want 5 or 6 different ideas in one sentence. The most that anybody can actually, fathom or absorb is maybe 2 or 3, especially in an opening sentence. So, it could be that's broken down into a little bit longer lead with a bunch of shorter, punchier sentences as a way in. Okay, so let's just read on. Investment opportunity with a guaranteed return that's 65 times greater. So in the headline, it's saying pays 650 times more. I think I would say that's 650 times more, if you can say that. Oh, actually, he is saying that in the next part sentence. Okay, and a whopping 650 times more. Okay, so yeah, just make sure there's a consistency with the main headline. So that's good. Plus, this exclusive can't lose, there's that can't lose, needs a hyphen. At least here we don't have the quotes. Investment has no management fees and no setup fees. In fact, there are no fees at all. Something that would never happen if you went to a financial advisor. So, kind of just cramming a lot in. I mean, we just started reading, so you don't want to, you've got so many good copy points, the person who wrote this, but, don't try to work it all in. Don't use them all at once. Use a little salting, give them a little bit, make them want to read more. You don't have to just rush in those first 3 paragraphs to tell them everything about the opportunity. Okay, so then we're going to, well, let's ask, what kind of lead is this, right? So it's kind of selling you really hard in the first 3 paragraphs about this opportunity. And then as you'll see in a moment, this 0 time, there's that 0 time again, and that's what makes it easy for disciplined savers to finally make their money work, and maybe work harder for them. I'd put that there too. So they can start earning luxury holiday-sized returns without lifting a finger. Sounds pretty appealing. This passive investment with bank-grade security only exists because of a chance. Okay, so before we get into that, because I have a critique there, I think we figured out, because I've just revealed it on this slide, it's a big secret lead, right? It's revealing a little-known secret or exclusive system, in this case, a high-yielding property-secured investment. And that's what's going to deliver the benefits or the solution that someone is seeking. So now, as you can see, it shifts from getting the prospect excited about the opportunity to agitating their investing pain points to further demonstrate the need, and we'll read further. It also positions the spokesperson as working for the prospect. But, if this is going to a warm audience, like, for example, a list of past buyers or other type of in-house list, it's probably fine because they're going to recognize, oh, this came from so-and-so. They're already going to know who it's coming from. But if it's going to a cold audience, at this point, you need to do some kind of introduction here. Hi, my name is so-and-so. I've been doing blah, blah, blah. I've got, whatever, some kind of, cool credibility boosting fact that doesn't sound too braggy for somebody to say about themselves, right? I've been helping investors like disciplined savers get more out of their money for the last 20 years or something like that, right? And then get back into the story, right? I thought I knew every way there was to squeeze more high-paying dividends out of investments quickly and safely. But then it wasn't until I had a chance conversation with a childhood friend. And again, actually, now that I think about it, this makes them look almost a little out of touch, because it's like, oh, you had to hear about that from your friend? Like, don't you have any money in the bank? Maybe this would be better to kind of put more in the first person. I found that, I was hearing from my clients about some of their bad experiences working with banks. And then I actually experienced it myself one day or something, and I said, this is crazy, right? Or something like that, right? Maybe it becomes more like, oh, I heard, I heard about it from a friend. So yeah, there's something there that could be potentially, but yeah, you want to introduce who's speaking. Okay, so now we're going to get into the solution. Right? We've talked about the big secret. We've got them excited about it. We've agitated some of their pain points. That's the moment when I made it my mission to find a property secured investment that gives disciplined savers a huge guaranteed return. And apparently, I did question him. It really is guaranteed. So never miss an opportunity to really play something up like that if, in fact, you really can say it. So, you see, more than a decade of near zero interest rates has supercharged the profitability of my property portfolio because my biggest cost has dropped. It's an unexpected welcome gift for a 32-year. Yeah, so now we're kind of jumping into some of the credibility boosting stuff that maybe should have come a little earlier. Sounding a little braggy too, with a $7 million portfolio, $7 million pound portfolio. But now we're back to, the agitating the pain points about the interest rates and all the suffering that they've done, right? Watching inflation wash away their life savings. So the brutal choice for responsible savers is to do nothing. Yeah, it seems like it's kind of hopping around. It's a little choppy. So, maybe some of this comes earlier. And then it gets into, hey, this is me. I've been doing this, and I've been in your shoes, et cetera, et cetera. I see how the banks, cheat disciplined savers out of, reasonable rates, et cetera, So, yeah, I'm not sure about bringing the childhood friend Jenny in. Not sure if it's doing, whenever you are debating, should I include something in my copy? Ask yourself, does this help my case? Does it hurt my case? Or is it neutral? And if it hurts your case, or even if it's neutral, take it out. I think potentially this is hurting the case. All right. So, it's clear the spokesperson is the expert behind the spokesperson is the expert behind the opportunity, and it's building credibility as well as trust. Obviously they've got impressive experience, 32 years, and I think the more you can tell more of their story, I've been in your shoes, or I've dealt with some of these things myself, kind of like we've seen in, the myasthenic miracle, anatomy of a successful lead video, which you hopefully watched before this. I bring in the spokesperson's own personal story, and so that builds trust. And it also like, hey, you're like me. All right, so now we're reverting back to the big promise, which is now made more believable. Why a 32-year property veteran will multiply your savings guaranteed in just 12 months without charging you any investing fees. Okay, so that sounds interesting. Okay, so now this is where it's getting ready to introduce the solution. I found a simple, repeatable way. So wait, you see, I can buy a house in a simple way that gives investors first charge bank-grade security on their savings. Then I add the value. And okay, this might be getting too much into the details. Like maybe this comes a little bit later. This is more about explaining the how. If you find yourself using a phrase like in other words, like maybe just say what you were going to say after in other words. Say that first because it's probably a lot clearer and stronger. I've found a simple, repeatable way to make a 3-bedroom terraced house, although that might be how it's referred to in the UK. Multiply your savings without you having to lift a finger. I know it's hard to believe. Yeah, and so when you make a big claim like that, and again, why not work that 650 times thing in here, right? Or by as much as 650 times. I mean, if that isn't the case, right? I know it's hard to believe. So don't just say, I know it's hard to believe, acknowledge their disbelief, right? In a way, and maybe you say it from the first person, even with my 32-year track record of finding the very best income investments, I was even shocked at how well this worked, right? The fact that you can, and then maybe that's where you get into the first charge, bank grade, simple, and it all works by simply adding value to a residential property in 2 simple and repeatable ways. And then maybe break that up in 2 sentences, by the way. If you read that 3rd paragraph, it's a very strong one, but it's just a lot to read. I know it's hard to believe that you can add value to residential property in 2 simple and repeatable ways, which is why I'm going to show you exactly how I've done it this year. To come up for a breath, right? Go through, get rid of any long run-on sentences, break them up into 2 or 3 sentences. It'll make your copy read much better. All right. So it's bringing in some social proof here, it starts to get into a bunch of testimonials, and then it goes on from there. But hopefully you got some good pointers on what to do and what not to do in your lead. Now, let's go on to a second lead critique. This is for a product. It's actually a patch that stimulates stem cells to help with several health issues. Okay, so, and out of the different health issues, for this particular headline and lead, the copywriter is focusing on pain relief. So before we ask what kind of lead it is, let's go ahead and read it. Consumed by chronic pain? Discover the secret solution your doctor will never prescribe. Activate your body's natural healing power fast with a 65% pain decrease in just the first hour of use with this tiny patented skin patch. Okay, well actually that is generally, I think it's generally pretty good headline and deck copy. It's probably something that we had already discussed and reviewed in one of our other sessions. One of the things that I would caution about is chronic pain can actually, for many clients, they feel it's too risky to use. It's not compliant. It can actually, some ways, be considered a disease claim. So you could say stubborn pain or stubborn discomfort if you really need to be even more conservative with your claim. Okay. So let's go ahead. The rest of it's pretty strong, so let's get into the lead and let's see what kind of transition we've got from the headline to the lead, and look at that opening sentence. Dear patient. Okay, actually, I'm having trouble with that, but let's keep going. Are you tired of living with chronic pain interfering with aspects of everyday life? Does it hurt to reach for something high up in your cupboard, to turn or bend at the waist, to walk up or down stairs? Okay, we're going to stop you here. All right, first off, and I did confirm with the copywriter, this is not just going to patients of a doctor's practice. This is what the salutation is for just anyone who gets this sales promotion. And it's a little off-putting because I'm not your patient, whoever the spokesperson is. So, I would not use that. I would, you want to keep it simple, just say dear friend, or, dear friend who's fed up with living in pain, or something like that, right? Agitate their pain point and call them out. Now, opening sentence being a question like that, followed by 3 more questions. Actually, no, it goes on. Afraid the pain will become a constant companion that never goes away and you just have to accept it as part of who you are. Okay, so we have 5 questions. I think that, it can actually be off-putting to have all those questions. So one thing I would do is try a whole different opening, right? I'm looking at my notes here. It could be that you have a series of empathy type questions, like an empathy type opening sentence and lead, and it could be if. So then you don't feel like you're being just pummeled with questions. Like, if you're tired of living with stubborn pain that gets in the way of living your everyday life. And here is where, it sounds a little formal to say interfering with aspects of everyday life. I think again, go back to, your research and what are the things they're actually having trouble with. Actually, the rest of it is actually pretty good. So I think it's time to just get rid of that first sentence, right? So, dear friend who's tired of living in pain, or sick of living with chronic pain or stubborn pain, So you could say something like, if it hurts every time you reach for something up in your cupboard, if it makes you want to scream in agony every time you turn or bend at your waist, and if you're sick and tired of avoiding walking up or down stairs because it's just too painful, then you're going to want to keep reading about this new breakthrough discovery, or something like that, right? So if. That would be a good way to bring them in. It doesn't feel like you're immediately being questioned. Okay. Now, another possible opening sentence is right there. Finding a solution to your chronic pain can be a full-time job. You know what? That could even be the opening sentence. I mean, obviously, you might have to say stubborn pain instead of chronic for compliance, but that would be another way in. And, either approach will transition very easily from the main headline. It's the idea that people who are living with this kind of problem are constantly looking for a solution. They're spending hours in the doctor's office. They're waiting too long for something to work, only to find it doesn't fully relieve their, pain. And so the idea that you have something that can act fast in just the first hour of use is really good anecdote to the idea that finding a solution is like this full-time job. So what kind of lead is this? It's a problem solution lead, right? It's leading with a promise in the headline, and then it's meeting the prospect right where they are now, showing empathy, and then shifts to then introducing the solution. So again, I think we have to decide, are we going with more of an empathy opener, or are we going to go with sort of that head nodder statement opening sentence, right? And I think you could combine both of them. I think you could start with the head nodder statement and how much time the medical bills pile up. Meanwhile, every time you reach for something on a shelf, your body screams out in pain. Every time you just simply bend or turn or bend, you blah, 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 right? What I said before. So, and then you could say, this could be a good transition. Have you found yourself in this vicious cycle without solutions in sight? And again, back to questions. I think asking too many questions, whenever you ask a question in your copy, and especially like in a headline, you want to make sure it's not a yes/no question or answer, right? Because you get them saying no. You do not want to have your prospect saying no. It's just like the classic in-person sales, sales call, right? If you were, you want to get them saying yes, yes, and thinking positive. As soon as somebody starts saying no, you've lost them. So you don't want that to happen in your copy. So, perhaps you're finding yourself in this vicious cycle with no solutions in sight. If so, maybe you've tried adjusting your diet or exercise. And adjusting, again, is a little bit overly formal word, right? Perhaps you've tried, hard to follow diets. You've spent hours doing strenuous exercise, okay? And overhauling your lifestyle is just, again, non-specific. Figure out what specific things that maybe your prospect has been doing and name those in your copy, okay? So, and this is also just way too long of a sentence. I'm not even going to read it, but look at that. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 4 or 5 different ideas in that one sentence. Break it up into at least 2 or 3. Okay, then we're shifting to introducing the solution, but this crosshead is a real stopper to me. So I think it just has negative connotations. Stop putting a band-aid on a gunshot wound now and reclaim your vitality. Now, I don't know if the copywriter heard somebody refer to their pain as like a gunshot wound, but it is kind of a stretch, in terms of an analogy. So I would stay away from that. And the Band-Aid is fine, as long as you've kind of demonstrated that, again, dependency of chemicals, prescription, that's kind of awkwardly written. You can't say the word prescription in supplement copy, or possibly this is like a patch. I don't know if it's regulated like a supplement. But yeah, I use less formal language, use more vivid words. And then if you are, I love the Band-Aid solution analogy, but kind of demonstrate that before you use it in the subhead or the crosshead. Okay, so now we're easing into a solution. There is a tiny, painless, chemical-free, and affordable solution to get to the root of the pain you're exhausted of dealing with. Okay, again, a little awkward wording here. All right, so let's break this down. This is that first sentence where you're going to finally say you've built up to this with agitating their pain points, letting them know you understand exactly where they are, and there's really been no good solution that's worked so far, right? And now you're going to offer them their salvation. Say it in a way that's a lot more compelling and exciting. There is. Those are words that just filler words. They don't belong in your copy, right? How about finally, or at last, right? Finally, researchers have discovered a tiny, painless, chemical-free, and affordable breakthrough. And what makes it so exciting is it gets to the root of your pain within the first hour, right? Or whatever we had as our speed of result claim, right? So when you are getting ready to finally reveal or hint at your solution, really make it more exciting than the way this is written. Okay, now we're going to look at one more lead, and this is one that actually got tested as a possible headline and lead for one of my control promos for Green Valley. It's for the My Sleep Miracle sleep supplement. And actually it was an idea that my client had to try to tap into some of the more male-dominated, conservative, big email lists that they wanted to break into with affiliates. And kind of go with this military type lead, a Navy SEAL lead. And so one of my mentees from last year um, actually is an Air Force pilot or was. And so she has a military background. And so I asked her to work with me and come up, see what she could do with this idea that my client had to come up with a new angle for an existing promo. And I think overall she did a really great job. I am definitely showing you the final draft and not the first, second, and 14th draft, right? We went through a lot of different drafts. Actually, I don't think there were 14, but there were quite a few. But yeah, we wanted to just try a whole new angle, something we really hadn't seen other sleep supplements do, right? So let's go ahead first and let's read the headline and the opening paragraph. The Navy SEAL secret that lets you enjoy deep, restful sleep, shrug off worry, and stress-proof your body, starting in just minutes. Yale scientists discover how a mysterious Zen molecule can help you become bulletproof to stress and reclaim rejuvenating sleep fast. Okay, lots of good things going on with this headline and deck copy. Navy SEAL secret, very compelling. It's already right out of the gate, communicating that there's some unique mechanism. It's painting a picture of life with the product, the benefits that they really want. There's a speed of result claim starting in just minutes, and it's name dropping Yale, and it's bringing in, again, this whole Zen molecule idea. Okay, dear frazzled friend, Navy SEALs and other special ops personnel are among the U.S. military's toughest and most rigorously trained elite. Okay, so that's a great head nodding statement. It's going to immediately pulls you right into the story or sets them up for what they're about to hear. Great transition from the main headline to the lead, and also it's a good head nodder statement. You want them thinking yes, nodding their head, just like that in-person sales call. Okay, so now it transitions into setting up an interesting paradox, right? It's talking about how they're doing all these things, working 72-hour shifts without a break, surrounded by danger around the clock. Yet, in these challenging environments, they thrive. They can deal with the stress. They're able to get a good night's sleep, even in the middle of bullet fire and mortar attacks. I'm not sure about that. I don't know. Well, I don't know if she was ever in combat, but sure, they're 10 times as fit as most of us, so here we're kind of overcoming an objection. But being faced with death is pretty darn stressful. How do they handle it? They know something we don't, right? It's a big secret lead. That's what it is. We're demonstrating a kind of superhuman ability that solves the prospect's pain point, and whatever that secret is that allows them to do it can help you sleep peacefully through the night, no matter how stressed you are. So now we're leading into the how. It all comes down to one scientifically proven fact. These elite warriors' brains respond to threats differently than the brains of us mere mortals. It's as if they've developed a superior level of emotional control compared to regular folks like you and me, is what allows them to keep stress. Okay, so we still got a ways to go to what is it in a supplement ingredient, right? And she and I did go back and forth. We really kind of struggled with it. She did a lot of great research. She found this whole Yale connection. But here, we're starting to tease about the solution, about the superior advantage that the Navy SEALs and Special Ops soldiers have, and how you can get it too. But I'm thinking, looking at it with fresh eyes, because while this did perform very well, it still didn't beat my control that I originally wrote, the original lead. And I think part of it is it's just taking too long to get to that solution, to make that connection, and we're kind of re-looping a bit, talking about how stressful, it is for these people. They're under all this enormous pressure, and we're kind of repeating some of the main copy points. And you got to be careful for that kind of re-looping thing in your lead. Every sentence, every paragraph needs to be moving the prospect further along and not feeling like they're going backwards. Okay, so now we're going to be bringing in the Yale doctor, and the Zen molecule, which again, we may have a little too much going on, right? Between the Navy SEAL secret and the Zen molecule. It's kind of a lot. Like, which one is the unique mechanism? It's not super clear. And then, we have the Yale doctor, how do we use him? Do we bring him up sooner? So, we have a lot of storytelling going on here, but at this point in the copy, and you want to go ahead and read it, but let me just give you an example. Is how they and other special ops warriors are able to thrive would cause the average person to curl up into a ball and cry. Okay, I feel like I kind of heard that before earlier in the lead, so how can you turn on this same stress proofing? I think we kind of heard that question being posed. And then now we're talking about the Yale guy. Maybe this comes a lot sooner, right? He's observing the resistance training. In one word, it's intense. And now we're into a lot of storytelling that maybe only someone who's really interested in military stuff may still be reading. Resistance training takes place in a mock prisoner work camp. Okay, a lot of authenticity here. You feel like it's really real, and it is kind of interesting, but maybe only to a certain person. And otherwise you're just going to lose them. You're not getting to that solution. I thought you were going to tell me how to sleep better and banish stress, and they're waiting for that. Okay, so hopefully these critiques gave you some new insights. And when you look at the copy that you've written, you can maybe do some of this critique stuff in your own head. So, but first off, to write killer leads, you've got to practice, practice, practice. It's the only way to get better. You can do all the courses you want. You can study all the controls you want, but you've got to just try to write one out by scratch, really, right? And to, write it as conversationally as possible. Make sure it follows a logical flow. Always ask yourself, what does my prospect expect to hear next? Don't go off on a whole different tangent, or jump around and make it choppy, because you'll lose them. You'll confuse them. As soon as you confuse somebody, they're gone. 3, see what happens after you've written a lead when you take out the first 5 paragraphs. Does it improve it and make it tighter? You'd be surprised how much time people waste just kind of getting warmed up. Just get right to it. Make it tighter. 4, get feedback whenever you can, and dedicate yourself to constantly improving. And like I said, nobody knows for sure what's going to work, so just keep trying new things, keep testing. And if something doesn't work, it doesn't mean that you suck, right? You can go back. I'm looking at this lead right now, and it's, several months later. I'm probably going to reach out to my client and say, you know what, maybe we give this another shot. We tweak a few things. Could get a winner out of that. I'm talking about the Navy SEAL one. Okay, and number 5, refer to the playbook that's in this module to help you brainstorm different opening sentence and lead approaches, avoid common mistakes, and ensure your lead is as strong as possible. So I hope you got a lot out of these critiques. I know I had fun doing it, and hopefully you're getting a lot out of the whole Get Dangerously Good copywriting system so far.